does, it's going to be okay. We'll live. So it's not a big deal. And I'd like to welcome everyone. I see we have a few people viewing right now. I know more will be joining as we go along. But for anybody that doesn't know who you're looking and talking with here, my name's Chris Wilkie. I run the Facebook group FBA Master and the FBA Master Bolo group. And I started selling online back in March of last year. And the other person that's on here, his name's Jeremiah, and I'll let him do a little introduction of himself there.
Right on. Hey guys, this is Jeremiah. I'm an accountant. I actually specialize in e-commerce accounting, and I met Chris, about a few months back, 2, 3, 4 months ago, and we've been working together, getting him all situated out, and just excited to provide some value. I know some of these topics that can be really make you want to pull your hair out, so I just want to help you cut through a lot of that complexity and get you back to selling.
Yeah, so for anyone who wants a little bit of backstory on how I met Jeremiah, it's going into the start of Q4 in 2014, so last year, I realized that I had some accounting things that needed to be taken care of. I had been doing some basic, pretty much just tracking of expenses and keeping receipts, but that was pretty much it. So I actually was in search for one, chatted with Jeremiah. He seemed to really know what he was talking about. Chatted with him some more, decided to go ahead and go with his services, and now he's kind of agreed to share some of the basic information of those questions that somebody who's just starting out may have and have no idea where to go. Because if you hop onto a lot of the Facebook groups, what you'll see is you'll see a lot of people ask about sales tax, and a lot of people give those answers of, well, it really depends, or can't really advise you on that. So we wanted to kind of give you a place where some of those basic questions we could give you some answers to so that you can either make your decisions based upon that or do additional research and go from there. So what I'm going to do is I have a few kind of questions prepared for Jeremiah here. He kind of knows what's going on. So I'm going to start asking him, and if anybody's watching right now and has additional questions, feel free to do them through the question and answer feature here on Google Hangouts. On the Facebook group, I'll kind of be monitoring those and bringing them in and asking Jeremiah when it's appropriate. Or you can shoot me a Facebook chat or anything else, and we'll make sure you get your questions answered. So, to get started, Jeremiah, we're going to start with the ever so popular topic of sales tax. So could you just give a basic overview of why somebody who's selling on Amazon should be concerned about sales tax in their state or other states across the country?
Sure. So basically it comes down to, like any other tax, it's all about compliance. You know, the state needs to make their money, and they're going to get it one way or another. And so, you know, it's obviously in each of our best interests to be in compliant with the state. You know, you obviously don't want any audits coming around. The only problem is every state has their own rules. Every state, inside of those states, there's even tax brackets each inside the states. So unfortunately, the states don't make it easy on you, but they don't. Unfortunately, they don't lessen the consequences. You can't claim, oh, I didn't know. You know. So that's obviously a bummer. And really, when I tell people, when it comes down to sales tax, it's really about, you have to weigh two different things. It's on the one hand, there's compliance. You want to be in the good graces of the government. And then the other hand is cost. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. And obviously, one thing you got to be aware of when you talk about sales tax is like a conflict of interest, because you know, if you go to a sales tax consultant to talk to them about it, you know, obviously they're going to want to get you to maybe be more compliant than you necessarily have to be, because that obviously benefits them. So I'll talk a little bit more about that, but yeah, I think that's a good start.
Yeah, so an interesting thing that when you start Amazon selling that some people may not realize is, although your business may be based, say I'm based out of Indiana, the way the laws are set up, if I sell to someone who's living in, let's say, Tennessee, I am one of us has to pay the sales tax for that state. And the way, until you get your sales tax stuff set up, the seller doesn't really pay it. You don't pay it, so someone's responsible,
Yeah.
and that's kind of where the problem ensues.
Sure.
So, Jeremiah, could you talk a little bit about the whole idea of what establishes a nexus in a state, or where I should be worried about, or where should someone start when they're going, oh shit, I've been selling stuff and now yeah, what do I do?
Sure. Yeah, well, if I can back up a second, the sales tax, it sounds really complex, but it comes down to four things, right? The first one is to determine if you're liable. That's what's called nexus, And then the next process is registering in the state, and then you got to collect sales tax, and then you got to file for sales tax. So just so you guys can get a picture of where all that fits in. Determining if you're liable is the very first step. So getting that right is most important. And like you said, there's that buzzword out there called nexus, and I'm sure many of you have probably Googled that. What does that actually even mean? So I guess to put in a few words, states, they say it different ways, and there's different terminology for it. But basically, it just means you're liable to pay sales tax, to collect and pay sales tax in their state. And so, and they determine that a few ways, and just in my research and training and background, there's three major causes of nexus or liability. The first one is it's your home state. It's where you're out of. Chris, you're out of Indiana. I'm out of Louisiana. So our home state is if that's your main business or center of operation, you automatically have a nexus in that state. The second one is if you have an employee. So let's say, Chris, you hire a family member out of, I don't know, Georgia, and that constitutes a nexus. So if you have an employee. And then the third one is if you house inventory. And for FBA, that's where the details get really gritty, because obviously we get Amazon to fulfill our inventory for us, and we may ship it to one place, but Amazon may end up throwing it in another warehouse around the country. So according to pretty much unanimously across all the states, if you have inventory in their state, they constitute that as a presence, a business presence in the state, so you immediately have nexus. So the day you get a toy arrive in Arizona, you immediately have a nexus in Arizona.
And see, here's an interesting fact that some people may not be aware of. So when you actually ship your items into an FBA warehouse, say I have a huge load in my garage right now that I'm getting ready to sort through and ship off, I may ship to 3 or 4 states. But what Amazon does is once they receive those items, they actually ship them across the country to their series and network of fulfillment centers so they can easily ship out that item when it sells to lower their cost of 2-day shipping. So even though I only send to 3 states, my inventory has actually been held in all but one of the Amazon warehouses that are out there. So it's just something that you may not be aware of that it's happening, but your inventory may be sitting in states you didn't even know it was sitting in.
Yeah, for sure. And that's where it gets really scary. But and we're going to talk a little bit more. I'm going to share a little bit more too of how do you find out which state your nexus in and that kind of thing.
So let's just go there, because that would be my kind of next question with it. Is okay, now I'm paranoid. All my inventory is where I don't know where it's at.
Sure.
What should I be doing, and how do I determine if I'm in trouble or what?
Yeah. So there's a couple of different routes. Unfortunately, Amazon doesn't make it easy for us to find that information, and there's a way to drill down in through some different sales reports, and you can see that. And I can send a link out to the group after this is done with just that method. Honestly, it's kind of complicated and it's a little bit of hassle, but there's another option. There's actually a website called wherestock.com, and basically you connect to your Amazon account there, and for like $30, they'll go and they'll scrape all of your back sales data, and they'll find out where you have a nexus and the exact day or month that you achieve nexus in the state. So that's $30, which is can be kind of pricey for some people or makes sense for others. And then there's obviously the tool very popular TaxJar, and they have kind of a tool that they can kind of go and scrape through back data and sales data and figure that out. So, and that comes with a subscription.
Yeah, so he was talking about going through the sales reports, and some people may be going, well, that kind of sounds like a cheaper way of doing it. I will say that that's the way I went through and did it because I was kind of curious, and it is a pain in the ass to do it because you know all the codes, have to search through everything. If you're good with Excel, you're looking at 30, 45 minutes, but if you're not very good with Excel, it could take a few hours. So just letting you know on that end of it, that $30 may be worth the time that you have, but that's completely up to you.
Sure.
So once you find out where you have your inventory at, what will we do from there?
Yeah, so the next step, you figure out, oh snap, I got to register in 10 states. Hold up, wait a second. The next step is, okay, should I register? I have a nexus in 10 states, for example. Should I register now first to collect sales tax in those 10 states? And this is honestly where a lot of the gray area is, and this is where you're gonna have there's some competing priorities here for registering. So I tell people, there's two things you got to weigh out. One, the cost of being fully compliant, and then there's the risk of not being fully compliant. So there's one school of thought that says, you know what, I'm going to be 100% compliant always, ever, no matter what it costs me, even if it costs me more to be compliant than not to be compliant. And what I mean by that is, if it costs you $1,000 a month to stay compliant, but the fees and expenses for not being compliant are only $300 a month, well then it doesn't make as much sense. Uh-oh, did I lose you, Chris? Hey guys, could someone ask a question and see if I'm still on air? Because I lost Chris here. One second, guys. Apologize for this. Hey guys, it still says I'm live. Could someone shoot a comment on here? Let me know if I'm still live on your end. Okay, good deal. Well, I'm just going to keep going where I was going. So apparently we lost Chris. Not sure what happened to him, but he'll be back in a minute. All right, technology. Right on. So where was I? Let's say you comply in 10. Okay, so let's say you have there's 10 states that you theoretically you determine you have nexus in. And then you got to weigh the costs. Is it going to cost me more to be compliant than not? Is there a threshold? So I tell folks, there's one approach that says I'm going to be compliant no matter what the cost, and then there's some people that say, you know what, I'm not going to be compliant ever until I know I'm going to get in trouble. I personally, and my mentor, who's a much more experienced, is an amazing e-commerce accountant, he and I take kind of more of a balanced approach where we say, you know what, there's some states where I have a very, very small sales tax liability. It means I have nexus there, but the actual liability in that state is so low, it actually costs me more. I mean, I'm paying cents or dollars or tens of dollars in filing, and it actually costs me more to be compliant in those states. And here's the other thing. When you're a small fish in the sea that is the state, honestly, they aren't going to even go after you until you become a big fish. So people will try to scare you with audits, but you're honestly and truly, you almost never get audited until you start hitting a certain threshold. And so there's a balanced approach. If some states you have such a small liability in, it actually makes kind of more sense to not register in those states yet. But then there's other states, like for a lot of folks, California is a big, a lot of folks sell products into California. if you have a large sales tax liability in California, it probably makes a good sense for you to go register in the state of California and then start collecting that in Amazon. So the real question with that approach, that balanced approach, in some states I register when I have a lot, and the states I have little, I don't register yet. The real question comes, well, where's that threshold? You know, when do you file and when do you not? And honestly, I tell folks, look, until your cumulative liability, like, you know, if you go back for the year and you don't even owe at least $200 or $300 of sales tax in that state, I honestly advise people not to register in that state yet. Wait till your sales start to pick up a little bit. So that's kind of my approach to registering. Because honestly, if you go ahead and you just go and register in all 15 FBA states plus your home state, which could be 16, yeah, you could be looking at hundreds of dollars every single month just to comply, or every single quarter. So anyways, that's my approach. And really the key there is, well, how do I figure out how much liability I have? And that's where I use a tool called TaxJar. I'm sure many of you are familiar with it. Some of you aren't. It's one word, taxjar.com. And they make money off of you filing taxes. So, you know, obviously they have a bias in some of their information, but they have incredible resources to help demystify some of these things. And I personally use TaxJar. It's $10 a month for the smallest level. And for $10 a month, they will go back and scrape all your old data, and they'll tell you how much you should have been collecting for this year and in past years. And that's the kind of the tool that I use to see, okay, how much liability do I have so far in different states? And actually, that's what I use with Chris. So, for example, I'm pretty sure Chris is fine with me saying I won't give any details, but we set up TaxJar for Chris, and I went back and looked through all of his reports, and basically it came out there are about 6 or 7 states where Chris had a pretty a significant liability in those states. So we've registered him in those states, and then there's another handful of states where he just has $50, $75, $100 of sales tax liability for the year. We're not going to touch those for the time being, and we're just going to keep an eye on them. And when the time comes, we'll go register in those, and eventually, I'm sure we'll be fully compliant in all 15 states. So, yeah. So that's the first thing is, do you have Nexus? We talked about that. The next thing is, okay, I have Nexus. When should I register? And then, so once you register, then the next thing is, well, you have to start collecting sales tax. And a note here, it's actually against the law to start collecting sales tax until you've registered. So yeah, you just got to be aware of that. Don't go and set up your Amazon settings to collect sales tax if you don't already have haven't already registered with the state and got a sales tax permit. And I believe Amazon won't even let you retrieve sales tax or use their sales tax tool. And another note too was I believe you have to have a pro seller's account to collect sales tax. So yeah, if you end up registering, you realize you have an individual account, you're going to end up needing to upgrade to a pro seller's account so that Amazon can collect sales tax on your behalf. Excuse me. So